Have you ever dreamed of, harvesting your own sweet corn, but figured you needed a giant field to do it? Well, what if I told you that you could grow delicious fresh corn on your balcony, or your patio, or even in a tiny little backyard? Okay, let's dive into this because honestly, it is way easier than you think. And look, this isn't just some crazy idea I came up with. This is the exact question a user on Reddit posted. They'd run out of space in their garden beds, but had a bunch of 5-gallon buckets and, well, a dream. It's a question so many of us with limited space have probably wondered. Is this just a fantasy, or can it actually, work? And there it is. There's our answer. A resounding "oh yeah" from a fellow gardener. This one comment totally proves you don't need acres of land. You just need the right technique. So, come on, let's break down exactly how they did it, and more importantly, how you can too. All right, first things first. Getting a great harvest all starts with getting the setup right from the very beginning. Before you even think about buying seeds, we need to talk about where those seeds are going to live. This is probably the single most important step for growing corn in containers. Okay, rule number one, and this one's a big one: depth. Your container has to be at least 12 inches deep. Seriously, no exceptions here. Corn has this surprisingly massive root system for its size, and giving it that full foot of space to grow down is the absolute bare minimum for a healthy, happy plant. But here's the thing, depth isn't the whole story, not even close. See, corn gets tall, right? And a tall, skinny pot on a windy day is just a recipe for disaster. You need a wide, stable base. We're talking 18 to 20 inches across. This stops it from tipping over and gives those roots plenty of room to spread out. So, the big question, how many plants can you actually fit in there? Well, you've got two fantastic options. First is the Reddit-proven bucket method, which is just brilliant. 5 stalks in a single 5-gallon bucket. You just arrange them like the 5 on a die, 4 in the corners, 1 in the middle. Simple. Or if you're using a raised bed, the square foot method is perfect. Just plant 4 stalks per square foot. And hey, you can make your life a whole lot easier by choosing a variety that's actually meant for small spaces. Dwarf corn varieties, they max out at around 3 to 5 feet tall, which makes them perfect for containers. So keep an eye out for names like Trinity, or the really cool-looking blue Jade, or a classic like golden Midget. And you know what? You don't need to get all fancy with your soil. Just think back to our Reddit success story. They just used a simple, eyeballed mix of store-brand potting soil and compost. That's it. See, corn is what we call a heavy feeder, which basically means it's super hungry for nutrients. So being generous with that compost gives it the rich, powerful start it really craves. Okay, your containers are prepped and ready to go. So let's move on to the next phase: planting the seeds and giving them the TLC they need to really take off and get growing. When it's finally time to plant, you'll want to sow your seeds about 1 to 2 inches deep. Now, here's a little pro tip for you. Plant 2 or 3 seeds in each spot. This is called overseeding, and it's basically your insurance policy against any seeds that just don't want to sprout. Then, once the seedlings get about 4 inches tall, just take a pair of scissors and snip the weakest ones right at the soil line. That leaves the strongest one to thrive. This next one is so simple, but it is absolutely crucial. Corn is a total sun worshiper. It needs, and I mean needs, at least 6 hours of direct, full sunlight every single day. So find the sunniest spot you've got on your balcony or in your yard, and that's where your corn needs to live. Now, since corn is such a heavy feeder, you are gonna need to give it a little boost. It absolutely loves nitrogen. Experts recommend what's called a split application for the best results. So when you're first preparing your pots, go ahead and mix in about 1/4 of your total fertilizer right into the soil. Then later, when the stalks are about 1 foot tall and really starting to grow like crazy, you'll add the remaining 75%. All right, so we've covered the setup, the basic care, but now we get to the most critical part of this whole process. I'm talking about the one thing that makes the difference between a sad, empty cob and a full, delicious ear of sweet corn. So what is that number one secret? Well, it's not about water, it's not about sun, it's not even about fertilizer. It all comes down to one simple biological process that big farms can take for granted, but that we as small space gardeners absolutely have to master. The answer is pollination. To really get this, you just need to know the 2 key parts of the corn plant. Way up top, you've got the tassel. That's the male flower, and it produces all the pollen. Then, lower down, you have the silks popping out of that baby ear of corn. Those are the female flowers. And here's the amazing part. Every single one of those silky strands connects to one single potential kernel. Mind-blowing, right?
See, corn is pollinated by the wind. The pollen from the tassels has to drift down and land on those silks below. And that is why block planting is so incredibly important. Planting in a tight grid, like our 5-in-a-bucket method, dramatically increases the odds of that pollen hitting its target. Planting in one long single-file row is honestly the worst thing you can do, because most of that precious pollen will just blow away.
But what if it's not a windy day? Well, you can become the wind. To guarantee success, you can just hand-pollinate. Just wait until that tassel is shedding its yellow pollen, break a little piece of it off, and then gently dust it all over the silks on your corn ears. It's a super simple, totally foolproof way to make sure every single kernel gets pollinated. Now, even with the best plan in the world, you might run into a couple of common issues. But don't you worry, the fixes are incredibly simple once you know what you're looking for. Okay, so you go out to check on your beautiful corn stalks and you see this. The leaves are starting to turn yellow. It's a common sight, and yeah, it can be a little discouraging, but your plant is just trying to tell you something very, very specific.
It's simple. Your corn is hungry. Remember how we kept saying it's a heavy feeder? Well, yellowing leaves are the classic textbook sign that it's just not getting enough nitrogen. The solution is easy. It's time to feed your plants with that nitrogen-rich fertilizer we talked about earlier.
This might be the most heartbreaking moment for any corn grower. You peel back the husk on your very first ear of corn, you're so full of excitement, and you find a patchy cob with a whole bunch of missing kernels. So frustrating. The culprit here is almost always incomplete pollination. Every single blank spot on that cob lines up with a single strand of silk that never got any pollen. It's a perfect visual of why that block planting and especially hand-pollinating are so important for getting that perfect harvest. So really, when you boil it all down, it's just 3 things. A deep, wide container to give your corn a stable home, planting in a block, not a row, so the wind can do its job, and finally, not being afraid to step in and give it a little help by hand-pollinating. That's it. That's the whole secret. You know, growing corn in a bucket isn't just a cool party trick. It's proof that with just a little bit of knowledge, you can grow almost anything, anywhere. It totally changes what you thought was possible in a small garden. So the only real question left is, what impossible thing are you going to decide to grow next?